Yeah. What makes a ceremony a true experience?
Well, everyone is different. Having said that, pretty much everyone is the same. Everyone wants to love somebody. Everyone wants to be loved by somebody. They may not even know that yet, but if they search their heart, that will make them happy. And we believe that strength and courage come from loving and being loved. Well, you know, it's a coincidence, I suppose, or maybe destiny, that once upon a time I lived in an area that was called Bear Hill.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, in the North Georgia mountains. And it was called Sati Nakuchi. And it means the hill by the water where the little bears play.
Oh, and that's the Muskogee name for it.
Yeah, Bear Hill.
Can you say it again in their native language? That sounds so beautiful.
Sati Nakuchi.
Sati Nakuchi.
And interesting also that this is Wolf Creek, because in our language that's Yaha Hachi. It means the wolves play by the moving water.
Yeah.
And so we always feel like animals are playing. So everything, almost everything we say about animals refers to them in their playful state.
Yeah. So I'm surprised by this coincidence, but not really.
No, really, yeah.
That the fact that right near Weimar, in the middle of Germany, there's this place, Wolf Creek, next to Bear Hill, and that you have a relation that is your natural, that's your home country.
Yeah, right.
Now, the other thing is, it's quite probable that when Germans who have read Karl May, for instance, when they hear Bear Hill and Wolf Creek, they think this must come right out of a Karl May adventure story where Winnetou and Old Shatterhand would have met. Let's come back to Karl May later, but now I think it's important to be aware that the connections that you described, bears and wolves and location, is something that's also in Germany. It's happening here, but we've kind of forgotten. We think it's only in Karl May or far away, but it's right here in the middle of Germany that we have Wolf's Creek at Bear Hill.
Right. Well, our people would probably think that it's all part of a beautiful story because we share these stories. And when the energy associated with wolves or the energy associated with bears or coyotes, eagles, hawks, owls, we say, all my relations. And so our people know that our eyesight is quite limited and our hearing is quite limited. So we rely on these other creatures to see for us in some ways and to hear for us in some ways. So when we're in a good relationship with these animals, we can actually see the world through their eyes. We can actually hear the world through their ears. And everyone knows, I mean, our dogs can hear, you know, mice playing 4 miles away. You know, I can't hear somebody knocking on the door. So it's a beautiful relationship between us and nature, to the point where our people don't believe we walk through nature. We think we are nature. And the various aspects of life on earth is just one life. You know, the earth is alive and we're all associated with that life. There's only one life on this planet. There's only one sun. There's one moon, one people. And so it's not uncommon and it's not far-fetched, let's say, to know that these things are happening all over the place. I mean, I find something similar when I'm talking to various tribes in Africa. The synchronicities are beautiful. I met a Maasai Sangoma. His first question to me upon our meeting was, "How are the children?" That was the question my grandfather would always ask. And they would say that if we know how you view the relationship with children, we know everything we need to know about you and your culture. And so it never ceases to amaze me and feel wonderful, the synchronicity around the world, especially with people who feel indigenous, you know, who feel a close kinship relationship with the earth.
Yeah. So, don't put your hand on your microphone. That's a silent. Is that? Yeah, okay. Sideline. Yes, so there is no place without indigenous traditions. In Germany, a lot of these indigenous traditions have been lost or corrupted. And it's heartwarming to hear you speak from your tradition and how you connect different cultures. Now, one thing that amazes me, you are not only doing sweat lodge ceremonies in Bad Sulza, you're also a great storyteller. And I understand that the native culture is also a culture of fantastic storytellers. How does that? How does storytelling how is storytelling a part of your culture?
Well, we would say that we have a strong oral tradition. And so the old people pass the stories on to the young people. So we say when the last person alive tells the story, if the people don't remember the story or don't hear the story, then there's no one connected to the story. Then history becomes a lie agreed upon by people who were never there. So it's a beautiful thing for your grandfather to tell you, I was a small child and I knew my great-grandfather and he was on the Trail of Tears. So I knew someone on the Trail of Tears. And people think that was 1830, 1835. That was like history, ancient history, but not so ancient to me. I knew somebody that was there, even though they were a small baby. And so, but they have a memory of it, and they passed that memory on to me. So I have first-hand account through the eyes of a child what the Trail of Tears was, for instance. And so we continue to honor that tradition of storytelling in order to maintain what we consider to be the highest characteristics of what it means to be a human. So through these stories, we learned compassion, we learned how to be integrous, we learned respect and dignity, we learned what it means to nurture, and probably the most important aspect of it is that we learn or we remember the times when we were shepherds and stewards and caregivers, whatever else we did. That was the basis of our posture here, was to be a shepherd, a steward, and a caregiver. Within that realm, we were storytellers and singers and dancers and hunters and farmers and all these other things. But basically, it was shepherding, stewarding, and caregiving, whatever else it was called.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that different animals as allies allow you to see the world in different ways. I heard you say in the ceremony yesterday where we were in Bad Sulza that the coyote has a certain approach to storytelling, and that the eagle has another approach to storytelling. What does the coyote do?
Well, and I don't speak for all tribes, but in my family and where I was raised, they would say that the coyote lives in your head, and he's a trickster. And so he tells stories in your mind, and you listen to these stories you're telling yourself, kind of like self-talk. And you tell yourself a story you make up some story about what happened or what you think you see or what you thought you heard. The coyote takes a hold of it and tells you that story in words that are familiar to you. And the coyote knows what kind of stories you like to hear, and he knows how you like to begin the stories, and he knows how you like to end the stories. He knows who your heroes are and who your villains are. The problem that we see with that is he doesn't seem to care if the stories are true or not. He just wants to tell a good story. We're not supposed to believe it. We're supposed to be amused and entertained by it. But people forget, and they start believing these stories, and then things get corrupted in some strange way. There's no longer an absolute truth. People have their own truth, which is nebulous. On the other hand, we think the eagle lives in our hearts, and the eagle always tells the truth. It may not be a good story, and it may not be told the way you want to hear it, but it's true. And so the eagle and the coyote are always in conflict. The eagle is trying to correct the coyote and says, "You must tell the truth. Change the story." The coyote says, "Well, we don't care about the truth. We just want a good story." You know what I mean? And who's on first and who's on second and all these things. And so that's an indication of the kinds of creatures. Now, the stories of the wolf are very different. The stories of the hawk and the owl are very different. The stories that the snakes tell are very different. The ones that swim have a whole different story. When I was in Africa with this Maasai chief, he told me, he said, you know, the story of the hunt is quite different when told by the lion.
That's right. Well, it brings to my mind that just if we focus on coyote and eagle, that hearing stories from coyote's point of view and hearing stories from eagle's point of view helps you to differentiate between worldviews, between fantasy, between true story. And of course, all our cultures have mixed coyote and eagle components in their self-perception. Now, it doesn't surprise me that in your education around the world, you came across the German fantastic author Karl May, who I believe is a great German coyote storyteller. There's a little bit of eagle in him too, but I think mainly he amazed his audience through coyote-style stories. The thing is, he was fictionalizing Native American peoples. He was creating a Native American superhero by the name of Winnetou. And I'm just curious, there's a certain response that German people have when they hear Karl May. When you read it, what is your response?
I was reminded of a story from long ago. Once upon a time, truth was valued. You could say, "I want you to tell me the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God." And people say, "Yes, I will tell you the truth." Well, over time, that changes. People say, "Well, no, that's not my truth. That might be your truth, but here's my truth." And so truth became disrespected. Truth became distanced. So truth felt abandoned. Truth became filled with despair and despondency. Truth became downright depressed. So truth left town a long time ago, and it lives deep in the woods by a waterfall. So now if you want to find the truth, you have to go deep into the forest by the water. That's where truth lives. You can't find it in the cities anymore. It's spread out as distance, as coyotes everywhere. After some time passed, truth became old and tattered and with a long beard and raggedy clothes, and he's sitting out in front of his little ragtag cabin. One day, he looked up and here comes Beauty, walking down the path. He couldn't believe his eyes. Everything he was feeling disappeared and he just fell in love. Well, of course, when he approached Beauty in the shape he was in, Beauty didn't recognize him as the truth at first. She was like, this day, you know. But truth in its way was persistent, because the truth will set you free. She fell in love with once she saw the heart of truth. So they got married. So now our people say we don't have to look for the truth anymore. We just look for beauty. And everywhere we find beauty is the truth. Because I could say, don't you think your baby is beautiful? And you'd probably say, boy, ain't that the truth? And so that's where we live now. And so when we read books that are based on fiction or based on fact, it doesn't matter anymore. My grandmother would say, doesn't matter if it happened or not, it's still true. You know what I mean? Because the truth is an intimate relationship with the highest characteristics of what it means to be human. If you can tell a story, doesn't matter what the story is, if it makes the listener feel more compassionate, if it makes the listener feel more in love, if it makes the listener feel like, well, I need to start forgiving people more. I need to have more mercy. I need to have more respect. I need to have more reverence for life. This is a precious moment. If the story you just heard brings these feelings up for you, we continue to tell that story, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for authentic human beings. Doesn't matter about the stories, origins. And so if we believe language is the fabric of our culture, then the stories reach into our hearts and set us free. We don't investigate the background. We take it at face value. This story made me happy. This story inspired me. This story made me want to be a better person. That's what matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think that was a very great way to describe not only Karl May, but many fictional stories by means of storytelling, which is the art that I think, Karl May was a great master of storytelling, and you are too. And there is a debate, and I think it's a legitimate debate to question where does friendly interaction with cultures end, and where does appropriation and colonialism start? And I think there's from the bad points of this, there's also some fun part. And you mentioned earlier that the place where you lived, the Bear Hill, is close to a village that is called Helen. And you mentioned some very recent tradition that is celebrated in Helen. Can you talk about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's startling when you stumble upon it if you don't know it's there, because you'll be in this southern climate with very, colonial kinds of pioneer villages. And then all of a sudden, here's a Bavarian village in the middle of the North Georgia mountains, facade to look like what they consider to be a Bavarian town. People dressed in old regalia, like they might have dressed in the 20s or whatever in Bavaria. playing musical instruments, dancing in the streets. They even have an Oktoberfest where they simulate beer gardens like they would be in Germany and Bavaria. And it's been going on there for a while. I don't think anybody there feels like we're misappropriating the tradition of Germany or that we're somehow ridiculing the process. We lavish it, you know. We say, boy, this is great that we don't have to go all the way to Germany. We can go right up here to this North Georgia mountain and pretend we're in Germany, you know. And so, and it makes people feel good. No one has ever attacked the village and said, wait a second, this ain't real. You know, you guys aren't German. What are you doing? You know, but because when people go there, we have a test, and it's the only test I know of that can monitor spiritual growth. That's a hard thing to measure, but this test has 36 questions, and if you take this test and then you go through an episode like visiting Helen, and then after you come back, you take the test again, and it'll indicate the spiritual growth you went through by visiting this place. That it inspired you, that it made you feel like you want to travel more, that it touched your heart and made you feel more closer to your family for some reason. These wonderful qualities, that's what's significant. Not the method, the results is what we're after. It didn't hurt anybody. Nobody's, you know, getting toxic. Nobody's getting chronically ill. Everybody feels better when they leave. That's a good thing. And so in my experience, when I read Karl May's book, I found it entertaining. I found it amusing. And then surprised, I found he hit the nail on the head a few times, which was amazing, since he had never been here, didn't know anything about it. So I reached inside of my imagination and thought, how could you do that? So I'm thinking, well, if you reach inside of yourself and look at your own authenticity, whatever it is, then you're in the realm of everyone's authenticity. And if you think it's a good thing to be regal, if you think it's a good thing to tell the truth, if you think it's a noble savage, as they say, you know, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Because you have to remember, if language is the fabric of the culture, the language he was speaking was quite a while back. I mean, I think it was before 1900. And so there was a whole different language being spoken then. And so to have that language filter on into the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s is pretty amazing. People still read Shakespeare and find it amusing and entertaining. They don't question the truth of the matter. People still read books about Superman and Batman, you know what I mean? They don't question the authenticity or the realms of the conversations that these people have. The Marvel comics are all over the movies these days. Nobody questions, is that real? Are they telling, you know, at some point it's just a beautiful story, and that's how we get intimate with each other around the world. Whether I'm in Asia, whether I'm in South America, whether I'm in Africa or Europe, it's the storytellers that keep the place moving. And so it's okay when we see actors doing it. It's okay when we see politicians doing it. But if a writer does it, we get upset. Why is that? I mean, you know, it's like everybody else is doing it to the 10th degree. And it was never a writer's intention to fool people or to take advantage or exploit. It was simply to tell a good story that would hopefully inspire somebody to want to be a better person. That's how I saw it.
Very good. I think that's speaks to the heart of many readers. Not to minimize friction and hardships and exploitation. And you mentioned the Trail of Tears. I mean, to have survived in a culture that was so ugly, suppressed, like the Native Americans. It's I really feel honored by the way you can integrate your truth, your culture, and see the spark of eagle light in Karl May's Coyote stories, and also see the humor of cultural adaptation, cultural appropriation, cultural friction. I think you mentioned earlier the place you lived, the Wolf. No, it was the Bear Hill, very close to the Oktoberfest village of Helen. You had a teepee hotel there, is that right? And so people came in lederhosen to sleep in your teepees?
Yeah. It's bizarre. It was beautiful. Yeah. And I had a trading post, the old Saltee trading post. And this was a long time ago, once upon a time, but it happened. And so I didn't know when I first moved there. It was in the spring. And I was happy, and they said, boy, you're really going to love it in the fall. I said, yeah, I like it when the trees turn. Well, it's not about the trees, Tom. It's about the Oktoberfest. I said, the what? They said, the Oktoberfest. We have beer gardens, and we sing these songs, these German Bavarian songs. And I said, what? This is not Bavaria. We don't sing Bavarian songs here. They said, yeah, we do. Be here. You're going to love it. It's great fun. Everybody has a fun time. I mean, and so I went, and it was the most bizarre gathering I'd seen in North Georgia. Everybody acting like they were German or Bavarian in these towns. And here's what I say: what y'all doing over there? You know where they're big, you get them lighter hoses over there? You know, talking in this southern drawl and trying to say German words, you know, Alberslein, you know. And so I said, I'm German. I said, my great-great-grandfather was Bavaria. And so it's all good because it was sweet, it was kind, people were friendly, they got intimate, everybody's patting each other on the back. So we don't get locked into what we would call the mundane. We take it to a spiritual level every chance we get. So we look at people and we say, we listen to what they're saying, but what do you see in their heart? What do you see in their eyes? And if you say, these are happy people, something has lifted them up. What was it? I don't see it as mockery. I don't see it as exploitation. I don't see it as stealing someone else's culture. I see that the Bavarian culture was so strong and so deep that it filtered its way over into the North Georgia mountains somehow. You know, strange phenomena. A met B, met C, met D. Next thing you know, we have Oktoberfest. How did that happen? And so, but nobody questions it. Nobody investigates it. Nobody wants to criticize it because millions of people are lifted up by it. That's a beautiful thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think there is another aspect which is debated and is also very popular to have theater plays, open air, that reenact fictitious stories invented by Karl May. So this brings thousands of people each year to these open air theater plays, and so they give one aspect of a German fantastic author inventing not only a native culture, but he had a very definite sense of it's about friendship. It's about friendship between cultures and individuals, and not about war and friction. So these stories are told, and I think I will tell the people that are a little dubious, that are critical of the Karl May festivities. I think I'll tell your stories of the Oktoberfest in Georgia. And maybe there is some kind of reconciliation possible.
I noticed once upon a time something similar. I had been invited to Bali years ago, a long time ago, 25 years ago, because they were having a pollution problem. And people were dumping waste in the waterways. And the indigenous people that lived there was trying to figure out ways to make them stop, you know, so we can clean it up. So I went there, and when I went there, I found an incredibly strong ecotourism frame. So they knew the tourists were coming, so they were wanting to make sure they had the right regalia for the show they wanted to present. They wanted to make sure their dances were the dances the tourists wanted to see. So they were performing for the tourists, not necessarily out of a sacred moment of a real ceremony, but a performance, a ceremonial performance. On the other hand, when we finished our work there and went back to Manhattan in New York, I'm on rooftops down in Soho with actual indigenous people doing real ceremonies that weren't concerned about tourism. They weren't concerned about who they were going to perform for. They were making ceremonies for the Creator. They were making ceremonies, you know, for their ancestors. They were making ceremonies for the children that aren't here yet. They were making ceremonies from the framework that we are the ancestors of the future. What kind of legacy are we going to leave? I thought it was a much loftier concept of reality. And it struck me funny that the place where I thought I was going to meet the most indigenous people was Madison Avenue, and Manhattan was Bali. They had swapped somehow or another the consciousnesses of what was going on. So I'm never surprised at where I find authentic indigenous people. And apparently I'm never surprised where I find people who are lost in the corrupt conversation of marketing and promotion.
Yes, yes.
Or even the beautiful conversation of marketing and promotion. It's very difficult to walk in both worlds, where you walk in the world of the colonial mindset, the Wasichu, or if you walk in the world of the indigenous mindset that we are all one and we owe our entire existence to 6 inches of topsoil and the fact that it rains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually, probably this may be my last question to you. You are here in Germany to teach people how to experience sweat lodges. And this is not just a sweat, it's a ceremony, it's a ritual. And you bring this sense of authenticity to that experience. What can you give a guidance how to be true, how to be truthful in a ceremony? What makes a ceremony true? Yeah, what makes a ceremony a true experience?
Well, everyone is different. Having said that, pretty much everyone is the same. Everyone wants to love somebody. Everyone wants to be loved by somebody. They may not even know that yet, but if they search their heart, that will make them happy. And we believe that strength and courage come from loving and being loved. And the authenticity associated with that is going to predict the outcome. So if people come to these ceremonies like they do, looking for authenticity, what is an authentic human being? What is an authentic human being? And so I say, for instance, if you feel pain, you're alive. If you feel the pain from others, you're human. So we explore these possibilities of what it means to be compassionate and loving and kind and gentle and reverent and respectful, and most of all, to give dignity to life itself. I think all creatures here, all plants here, all the water here, all life forms here wants dignity. It wants to be respected. It wants to have a proper place in the scheme of things, because on this planet, we're all in it together. No one is different. No one is above anybody else. No one is below anybody else. We're all at the table. And every single life form has a purpose. And once we understand that and accept that and surrender to the process and strive to be compassionate, loving, kind, and gentle, and remember why we're doing that, because there's children And no one that I've ever met wants to raise their child in a war zone. They all want to raise their children in a safe and loving environment. What does it take to get that? I've been looking at that, and it seems like if language truly is the fabric of our culture, then today more than any time in my life, we need to alter the narrative. The narrative globally right now is not child-friendly. And so for me, authenticity is wanting to delve into that narrative. So we say, for instance, before ceremonies, the world is perfect. There's just a lot of people having a really bad conversation. So what we strive to do is to raise the level of our personal poetry, so everything we say to each other is a reflection of what we hold dear in our hearts about what it means to be human. Because we're only going to be walking on this earth for a little while, but we're going to be ancestors for the rest of time. So once people actually realize that, they get concerned about the legacy. What are my footprints telling my people? How will my children follow my steps? Do you even want them to, based on the current steps you're taking? And if you do, then you're going to have to alter yourself to become more authentic. Because what you're truly saying is, I want my children to be authentic. I want my children's children to be authentic. So these parables, these stories, the storytellers are like the heart of the matter. When they tell these stories, and if it inspires the children to be more authentic and to be caricatures of all of these beautiful characteristics of what it means to be human, we've succeeded. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom Blue Wolf.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be close to you and have the aspiration to succeed.
The feeling is mutual.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bärenhügel, for offering us the spiritual ground. Thank you, Wolf Creek, for bringing the water past this amazing garden. And thank you, Salve TV, for making this conversation possible.